Welcome to the Four Rooms podcast, where we explore the four rooms of entrepreneurship: health, wealth, scale, and relationships. Each episode is dedicated to opening new doors and uncovering insights that empower you to design your entrepreneurial journey to be both lucrative and fulfilling. And now, your hosts, Amber Spears and Brett Kaufman.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Four Rooms podcast. I'm your host, Brett Kaufman. I'm here with a new friend, but I'm very excited because we're deep in this relationship on this show. Pedro, thank you, my man, for coming.
Dude, excited to be here, man.
Yeah, it's going to be sick. So we're in our pre-show, we were talking about a lot of different things. But before we dive into all the different things, I want people to know what you do and how you help people.
Yeah, so I'm the founder of a company called Mad Events Media. We're an event marketing agency and consulting firm. We're on a mission to donate over $1 billion in charity through our client events and through our own revenue. That's my driving force. And just a little origin story of like why this all matters and why I even care is that, you know, the name MAD literally stands for make a difference. And the reason I started this was I saw people in our industry being taken advantage of, you know, people saying they can help when they actually can't help, and just wanting to actually create something that just operated at a higher level of consciousness and like truly serve people at the highest level.
That's powerful. And how did you come up with the acronym MAD?
I did. And it was completely by accident. I mean, like the name MAD, I just kept on seeing it everywhere.
Okay.
During this time where so many people were outreaching to me, you know, asking for help, you know, having gone to other people, things not really working out and saying, hey, can you help? And I was mad that I felt my community was being taken advantage of. And the word MAD just kept on showing up in my field all the time. And I had no idea at the time that it actually, the acronym was like make a difference, but I was like, this has to stand for something. And then when I thought about it, I was like, make a difference. Like it just made perfect sense. It felt like literally it was something that was just like completely, you know, divine, that just kind of came through in the way it all came together, from the name to the acronym to the meaning. But it's just so authentic in alignment, you know, to what this is all for and why I started in the first place.
I love those moments where like the downloads just happen. Like I recently had one at Love Burn. And for those that don't know, Love Burn's like Miami's regional Burning Man. And we were talking last night at the mansion that you're going to be going. You've been to 3 Burning Mans, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I'll get there to the big one. But I remember having this download. It was like, I don't know, maybe like 3 a.m. at this point, and just like closing my eyes and just feeling such a sense of like gratitude and like peace and calm. Like nothing, like the stress I have is so minuscule in regard to the grand scheme. And similar when what David Bayer was talking about yesterday of just you're in control of what you're feeling. And what I love about this room is like this community that we're in, we're going to hit our goals. If it takes a little bit longer, that's fine. That calmness, knowing that you're in seasons. Sometimes your revenue will be higher, sometimes it'll be lower. But the idea is like you're going to get there. Just keep doing it. And I had a huge download. So I love when those moments happen.
I love it, man. The Burn, whether it's a regional or a main event, like they're just incredible. It's a remembrance on why we're alive, and then taking that energy and bringing it back to the world to serve.
Yeah, we were talking before it started about playing more and how it had such a impact on both of our lives. And actually, if you are okay with it, resharing that story you told me about your friend's son, the 10-year-old.
Yeah, man. So one of my dear friends, his name is Ika, and he had a son named Mana who was diagnosed with a rare brain cancer at the age of 9. And a couple of months into his journey, he started asking the question, what's the purpose of life?
At 9.
Yeah, I think that gives you like a flavor to the type of boy this boy was. Like he just had so much character and so much like diversity to his personality, and he was deep. He was curious about so many things and so authentic in his expression. It wasn't until after his 10th birthday that he came out of an episode where we thought we were going to lose him. This happened many, many, many times throughout the process. We're very, very scary, very, very blessed to have him around throughout all of it. And he came out of one, and he was there with his full personality and his full joy and his full expression. And he looks at his parents after waking up, who were so stoked to see him. And they say, and he says to his parents, says, "Mama, Papa, I think I figured it out." It's like, what'd you figure out? The purpose of life. They were like, whoa, like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
He looks away for a moment, and then he looks back at his parents and he says, fun. The purpose of life is to have fun. And then he goes on to say, and now that I know this, I think I'm going to get better. I think I'm going to get better. And that just kind of goes to show if like you really tap in and tune into that, like the healing frequency of truly making that shift, you know, in his understanding and what he was meant to teach me and teach others, that would go on to like drastically impact my life. You know, there were so many times throughout my life that I've prioritized work, that I've prioritized meetings and, you know, over my relationship, you know, over my well-being. And it's like after I experienced that, something drastically shifted in me, where it's like, no, this is my number one priority. And now everything else gets to be built around that versus the other way around. And it's like this flood of creativity, this flood of joy, being able to create from that level of frequency just absolutely changed everything in my life. And I love telling this story because I hope that it encourages others to do the same.
Yeah. And I get it. Like, I get where to think about having fun, you could be like, well, what do you mean? I have to make money. I have to do this meeting. And so I understand the person's struggle who doesn't know the right way to incorporate it. Because for me, it took forever. In one of my battles with depression, I didn't come up with this concept, but I started calling it mandatory happy moments, where just like going to the gym or journaling or hitting your KPIs, like things I have to do in my business, I have to schedule in my mandatory happy moments during the week. And for me, it's like improv, yoga, breath work, just like hanging out with friends, whatever it is. And the whole concept there was like, let's say I had a terrible day, but a mandatory happy moment at night. Worst case scenario, my day is neutral. If I had an okay day, mandatory happy moment at night. My day is good. I have a great day, mandatory happy moment at night. My day is like euphoric. And I was like, I must, like I commit to going to the gym 6 times a week, I must do mandatory happy moments often 6 times, if not more, a week, because I have to keep those endorphins going. And I had to build a muscle around creating fun in my calendar. Otherwise, I know myself, I'm going to grind too hard.
Right.
I'm just going to burn myself out, and it's not going to be worth it in the end.
So I'll offer also a slightly different perspective as well, because I think both are right. You know, we have to understand ourselves to arrive at the playbook that makes sense for us.
Yeah.
The one that's been meaningful for me is that I feel I've shifted in this place in my life, you know, what do I want from life? Which I can say I want fun, right? Versus what does life want from me? And I think what life wants from me and what life wants from all of us, if we actually create the space for it, we might be really, really surprised to the places that might guide us and lead us to. And I believe that life wants us not just to be happy, because I think that's just like the surface, but be truly fulfilled. And in the process of being truly fulfilled, I think there's a lot of joy for us to experience, you know. And I think life is gently guiding us at all moments in a certain direction. But it's a journey of like really practicing something I heard David Baer say here at Four Rooms, which was like this practice of non-resistance. And if we can practice that way of non-resistance in our life, I think without trying, life is guiding us to live the most extraordinary lives that we can possibly imagine, which is filled with so much fun and joy and people and community and things that we can't even possibly imagine. And so it's just that shift from like, stop living for yourself and start living for where life wants to guide you.
Totally.
And it will surprise you in so many ways beyond what we can possibly imagine.
And it's knowing how to tune into that, because I'm grateful I grew up where I have 2 very loving parents. They're still together. They're happily married. And I'm grateful I know I can come from a good background. And it took me a while to still feel stifled in regards of expressing myself. I'm like, I come from a healthy home. And so I recognize if those that don't come from a healthy home, how that journey could still be even harder to get there. And it took a while for me to figure out who I wanted to be. And it's still evolving. I'm turning 31 on Wednesday. I got plenty of time as I figure it out. But what I mean is like, it took me a while to figure out what is authentic Brett love. Like if I always ask myself, when I have all the money in the world, how am I spending my day? And asking myself those kind of questions.
Yeah, it's good.
Help me. I think that's where the mandatory happy moment also started to like solidify my subconscious.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, all right, I don't need to worry about making any money. Like, how do I want to spend my day? And that's what I actually love doing here at Four Rooms, like these podcast stuff that we do. When I get on membership calls with people to see if they're a good fit or joining, I get so much joy from that because like I love this stuff. So I'm like, all right, I need to spend my day doing podcasts, doing sales calls, and connecting our members to more people, because it's like that gives me so much life. That's how I have fun. And then I know from there, the ripple effect into everything else.
Yeah.
How'd you get into event marketing though?
Yeah, phenomenal question. I feel like I've been in it my whole life in some way or another. I think it started with my dad. So my dad was a taxi driver growing up. My dad and mom are from Dominican Republic. They migrated to the US. And I bring up the fact that my dad was a taxi driver because he had a moment that shifted his life, which led to me starting to be exposed to the event world. And it was that he was driving his taxi in the Bronx in New York City. And instead of this guy paying his fare, what he did was he ended up pulling up a gun on my dad's ribs and said, "Give me all your money." And I think that experience really shook him to the point where he started becoming available to things that he maybe previously wasn't available for.
Oh, interesting.
You know, my dad was the guy who like valued looking good more than doing things to better his future. And that moment shifted everything. And what happened was he had a friend from Dominican Republic, Henry was his name, and he ended up joining a network marketing company and ended up recruiting my dad to join this network marketing company.
Okay.
And he ended up shifting his habits overnight from, you know, music and all different things that like just weren't like, you know, helping him become better, to now listening to cassette tapes and reading books and going to his network marketing conferences. And that was phenomenal because at the age of 5, I got a chance to go to my first event.
Oh, no way.
Which was my dad's company convention.
Okay.
And there I saw people winning. There I saw people being poured life into. You know, I saw people dreaming. And I've been a dreamer my whole entire life, ever since I was a little boy. Like I always knew I was different. And so when speakers would speak who had done something in life, I was like, that's for me. I've always believed it's for me. I don't know why. And I was like, I just love the feeling I felt in those environments. And so that's how I think it started. And I went to lots of those growing up. And then what happened was I dropped out of university after being there for a week. And I ended up going to work for Tony Robbins. And I worked for Tony for over 4 years. And during that time period, I went to every single event that he did. And so I saw from the inside out what a multi-9-figure event company looks like. And that was the seed of what would come.
That's crazy. So how'd you get involved with Tony? You just apply one day? What was that route?
So the backstory was that when I dropped out of university, I ended up I had a credit card, which was a Discover card. And it had a limit of $750. And
$750?
Exactly, $750. And I maxed out this entire credit card for about 50 books on Amazon.
Oh my gosh.
And one of the books that I read was a classic book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Mm-hmm.
And in there, he offered a lot of mindset shifts, which were really pivotal to my career at the time. And the one thing that led to me working to Tony was one line that he said, and which I took to heart. And it said, rich people work to learn. It said, poor people work for a paycheck. And it was a mindset. It's like, if you're there's a difference between trying to make the most amount of money you can make versus learning the most that you can learn.
Yep.
And so I took that to heart. And I had just started being exposed to Tony Robbins, something about his charisma, who he was, the way he spoke. It was just like, I can learn from that guy. And I took a white piece of printing paper and I put 10 numbers on it. And the goal was, can I write 10 names that I think I can learn from? And for whatever reason, I only wrote one. And it was Tony Robbins. And then I circled it and I went on the Tony Robbins website and I said, I want to work for this guy. And every single job they had there, I was like completely underqualified for. But it's just been like the story of my life. Like I always feel I belonged. So I just applied to the thing that I wasn't qualified for. And somehow, some way, I was offered a stepping stone, which was to become an assistant to a senior salesperson at the Tony Robbins organization. So that's how I got my foot in the door.
That's crazy. And then from there, you went into sales afterwards?
I went into sales. I was helping first like 2 different salespeople inside of the organization. Within less than a year, I got promoted to the senior sales team and did really well there. And that just offered like a lot of different opportunities, but it allowed me to be in the room It allowed me to start to fall in love with marketing. It allowed me to start to fall in love with sales, with communication, with influence, and being around people who were doing things. And I think that's just like one of the number one tips that I can give people, which also, like, bringing this back to forums and the power of community, is that I think proximity is power.
Huge.
Proximity is power. And I think the reason why you come to a mastermind like this is that you want to be around people who are actually doing things. If you're around success, you can't help but be successful.
Yeah.
There are people who've solved for the exact thing that you're trying to solve for inside of your life, inside of your business. And it's like, man, you're here at home stressing out about this thing. And this person literally says one thing in one sentence that just drastically like removes all of that stress.
Yeah.
Because they gave you an insight that has, a multiple of return. And I feel like that's just what I did my entire life. And Tony Robbins was just like the beginning of that journey for me.
If you're looking to get even more from the Four Rooms podcast, you don't want to miss our exclusive newsletter. This is your personal invitation to join a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who are all about balancing health, wealth, scale, and relationships. Each week, we're going to bring you additional insights, tips, early announcements, and other information that we just can't fit into this podcast episode. Plus, it's a great way to keep the conversation going and ensure you never miss a beat in your entrepreneurial journey. It's easy to subscribe. Just visit fourroomsmastermind.com, scroll to the bottom of the page, and enter your email. That's fourroomsmastermind.com, and just enter your email. We promise to keep things light, keep your inbox interesting, informative, and fun. Join the Four Rooms community today, and let's grow together.
Man, that exposure is so important. I remember before I got into this, I worked for an organization called AIPAC. It's a bipartisan pro-Israel lobby, and I loved it because my background being Jewish, it's an American organization, a Jewish organization, but what we did was we brought together the U.S., Israel, and her allies to basically keep the world safe at a high level as best as we could. And then, but every year we would have what's called policy conference, and they don't do it anymore, but it used to be about like 18,000 people from everyone that was like Jews, non-Jews, like African Americans, Hispanics, Asians, people from the LGBTQ community, to like just every walk of earth would come to DC, and we would have this massive conference. Hear from speakers. It's basically kind of like what like a large conference you've been to before.
Yeah.
Because you haven't been to our annual event yet. It kind of feels like that. We're like breakouts and like amazing talks. But that was the first time I got exposed to the power of being like in a room like that, and like the transformational experience of being in that shared energy, which is why like I love going to events, because I just know that you get whipped up in that energy, and it's just like, I don't care how tired I am, you just get this like third, fifth, sixth win that just keeps you going. And just something about us being there and being able to connect with other people who get it is so rare, which is why I don't know if this happens to you. I get post-event withdrawal where I'm like I would get so sad. I'm like, I need to go back and be around people. And I was like, oh, because I'm extroverted. I'm like, no. There's just something super unique about being in a room with people that get you.
Yeah. I think what's unique about it is, you say get you. For me, the words I use in my life is like being understood, feeling like you belong. I my whole life, I just felt like I just felt like an odd person, because no one freaking understood me, right? Everybody thought I was a problem child because I didn't get good grades, but I had this well of creativity that was just dying to be expressed that no one can actually acknowledge and see. And then you come into a room like this and everyone's like you.
Yeah.
Everyone is what other people would call crazy. And so you feel understood, you feel loved. You feel like even though someone's just meeting you, like they want to pour into you, they want to help you solve your problems, and it's not just in business, it's in your relationships, it's in your health, it's in all the areas of life that, truly matter. And like, if you're around that, like you can't help but become that. Like you got to really, really mess it up.
Yeah.
Like not to make forward momentum when you're around people who are doing things.
Oh yeah.
We
joke like, the way you don't get the ROI you're looking for here is that you didn't actually show up to the event. And the second thing is you didn't fill out your intake form. So we couldn't even help you. I'm like, we're giving you everything you need. We just need you to do these two things. One thing I am curious about is, how did you start your process of figuring out what worked for you and what doesn't work for you?
As it relates to what?
Just like you knowing you better. Because like as an example for me, it was like, this is before I really like, I was always into personal development, but this was more like I would go to a ton of different activities, like whether it was improv, salsa dancing, bachata stuff, to figure out like what I liked. And then from there, I knew I was on the right path because I would feel something in my gut. And then whenever I did something where I didn't feel in my gut, I was like, I cut those things out.
Yeah.
So I kind of had my experimental process that way. Did you have like a way of figuring out who like you were at your core so you knew what to attract? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think for me, my process has been, in the beginning at least, like giving into what I would call delusion.
Okay.
Realizing that that wasn't the way.
Okay.
Usually experiencing a lot of pain. And then through that pain, realizing through a feeling and experience that life was guiding me to a deeper truth. So for me, what I didn't share earlier on was that when I was 5 years old and I went to my first event, I was in Las Vegas, walking through the MGM Grand, and me and my dad were wearing matching suits. Classic Men in Black, if you can imagine that little 5-year-old boy and his dad, classic matching Men in Black suits. And we're walking through the MGM Grand Casino. And when we walk through there, we see the grand prize that the casino is advertising. And it was $1 million in cash, in $10,000 stacks, in $20 bills. Now, I'm from the Bronx, in New York City. Like, I've never seen that kind of money in my life up to that moment. And my eyes just like lit up, and I squeeze my dad's hands with like all my might. And I look at him, and like something about that moment just like connected us. And I kid you not, when I was 5 years old, I look at my dad and I say, I'm going to be a millionaire.
Hell yeah.
With like certainty. Like, I'm going to be a millionaire. And the reason I share that story is because that was my drive for a really long time, to be successful. And the moment specifically where it all crumbled for me was, and this answers your question, is that I left the Tony Robbins organization. I launched my own business and I started doing my own events. And these events were sizable in the sense that I had at least somewhere between 200 and 300 people every time that I would do them across the country. And this particular event was in New York City.
Okay.
And that's significant because my dad lives in New York City. And so he was there. And so it's the end of the event. And all these people are standing around this ballroom, beautiful chandeliers in this hotel. And people are sharing their takeaways from the event. And they were beautiful. They were emotional. They were moving. I was like, it was crazy. I'm like, like a 23-year-old, 22-year-old freaking kid at the time. And this is the reflection that the outer world is, reflecting. And I look towards the entrance of the ballroom and I see my dad and I see tears coming down his face. And that's significant because I've never seen that man cry in my life. I've only seen him cry twice.
Yeah.
That was one of them.
Yeah, I love that.
And I go to bed and I wake up the next day. Oh, one thing that I should say before that is that moment was significant, one, because number one, it was the physical manifestation of a dream that started when I was 5.
Right.
But beyond that, it was also the second thing that I was craving for, which was my dad being proud of me. So this is what was driving my life at the time. And so I go to bed and I wake up the next day. I remember the first exact words that came to my mind, which was, now what? So this is what I thought I wanted my entire life, what was driving me. And then it all crumbled literally in that moment. And in that moment, I decided I can't do it. And I shut it all down. People got refunded. And I said, I don't know what's next for me, but this isn't it. So I shared this story to say that this is what I thought I wanted. Life showed me that this wasn't it. I didn't know what the answer was. And so I went on a journey of pursuing some truth, which I had no idea where that would guide me.
Yeah.
And where that guided me was to, going overseas and meeting my spiritual mentor completely by accident and having my spiritual awakening, and then realizing that there is more to life to this.
Yeah.
And realizing that I just had the wrong internal compass the entire time. And so all this to say that I think in life, we're going to always follow what we feel feels right. But then life, if it wants to clarify our path and actually guide us to something deeper, it's usually going to be met with some sort of confusion, some sort of a question, some sort of pain. And I was in the most beautiful place one of the most beautiful places on planet Earth, on a beautiful island in Thailand. And I felt just lost and depressed and borderline suicidal. And I had to go there for life to show me that what was motivating me and what was driving me was not it. And there, right there, like in that island, I found myself. I found the deeper truth. I found that at the center of everything was me. Everything that I was blaming, everything that wasn't working, the thing at the center was me. And that was a very humbling realization because now I need to sit with all my shit.
Mm-hmm.
And my belief and where life has guided me is like, as you clarify that, as you feel that, as you heal that, as you filter that, then life will just show you what's next. And that's just been my whole entire life. And that happens in cycles. It's not like a one-time event. Like it continues to unfold in my life and just guide me to the next layer of truth. The next layer of truth.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, because it's like in August, I had like the worst month I've ever had in my entire life. It just 3 things exploded at the exact same time. And it was just like in a business dynamic, in a family passing, and then a romantic relationship ended. And now I look back on it and I'm like, oh, that was the snake skin I had to shed in order. Because like you said, like life is always guiding you. Like for me, I'm very connected to God. Other people would call it the universe. Like whatever people would call it, it's like absolutely beautiful. But you're right, because it's like, how often are we stopping, slowing down, and listening? And for me, listening comes from breath work, yoga. Like Love Burn was a phenomenal way of stopping and listening, because I just got to connect with me. And that kind of ties back into like the play concept. We were saying like, I need to play more. And what for me playing is just like disconnecting from, not responsibilities, but disconnecting from just like feel like I have to be a man and just like be a kid, just play again, just like have fun with your friends or whatever it is for a period of time. And it helps me reconnect. And I think that's why I love improv so much. Cause like once a week I'm on stage for like 2.5 hours and you don't have time to think. Literally improv is like, all right,
the moment.
Your inspiration's coconut water. And then you just like go. And it's like,
wild.
It feels so fun. So I so encourage my friends, like find something you can do weekly. Just gives you that expression, because I was like, that to me was the best form of therapy. And I do a lot of therapy still, but that was like the best form of therapy I've ever had. So
yeah, I think that's super powerful, man. And I'll just add this one other piece. One of my favorite books in the world is a book called Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And in it, he teaches a very simple philosophy. And it's a very simple concept. And is that if you want to grow in life, you literally have to do nothing but live life.
I like that. Yeah.
And the reason I bring that up in terms of like, why that's significant is because so much for most of my life, I thought that I needed other people to learn. And I think being around other people accelerates the journey drastically. But I think there's a level of ownership that we need to take for our own lives and realize that moment to moment, every single day is an opportunity to learn about ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think that until we make that acknowledgement and realization, we're always looking outside of ourselves for answers. And I think one of the most beautiful places that we can find answers is actually within ourselves. And so we're all living. If you're listening to this, you're alive. You have a beating heart. The question is like, are you actually paying attention to what's unfolding? Like every single time as an entrepreneur, like how many times a day does like your heart contract?
Yeah.
There's probably a lesson. And there's probably a code in there for you if like you're willing to actually be with it, if you're willing to listen. I mean, building a business is one of the most spiritual paths that we can ever go on. And it's right there in front of us every moment.
Dude, I love that. As we come near the end of this is your first event with us. And I would love for you like to share like some takeaways you had. We can start with like yesterday's morning session of like when you were with David. What was like a big takeaway you had from his talk?
Yeah, I think one of the things for me was this concept of non-resistance. He was talking about this like good math versus bad math.
Yeah.
And bad math was like, we all have desires. And then we usually meet those desires with like hustle culture, or a wide range of other things. So it's like desire plus, fill in the box, right? Equals results. And he's like, no, that's bad math. Right. And then what he went on to talk about was like, what does good math look like? Desire plus non-resistance. Right. Meaning like, life has put a desire in front of you, right? Okay, phenomenal. You're an entrepreneur. You're answering that desire in your life. But instead of all these other things that you think you need to do to actually achieve them, like really all you need to do now is actually practice non-resistance.
Yeah.
Right. And that's really where the growth is on a personal level. And you can't grow your business beyond your own personal leadership.
Yeah.
Which is why it's like at the center of like the most important thing that we can actually practice. And so there were so many things in what he taught. It was like, his frameworks were just like crystal, like just absolutely amazing. And it was a phenomenal conversation because we'll never grow our business beyond our own personal leadership. And so I really enjoyed his talk. I think he's an absolute master at what he does. And the fact that you guys were able to put him on stage and for us to learn from, I think was phenomenal. I think the breakout rooms were also really powerful. I mean, you're putting in the room like really smart people to have focused conversations.
Do you have an example from one of the expert sessions you would want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think every single one of them that I went to, I think there was a couple of nuances that I was able to take away. But besides just the takeaways, I think it's an opportunity also, to contribute to the conversation. And so like one of the desires in my own business is like, I know I wanted to AIify my entire business. Like, I think not doing that is incredibly dangerous and incredibly like, it's not an option if you want to be in business long term. I think, be able to compete in today's marketplace. And so, one of the sessions was all about that. Like, what does that look like? How do you think about that? What's the order of operation here? What are the frameworks? What are the tools to be able to do that? And so there was a phenomenal session by Brett Hart on that topic. I mean, there was another one which was all on AOV and LTV with two incredible badasses who have just like, built amazing things, like incredible. And we were able to have an open conversation about that, of like where they see things going, and us be able to mastermind about that. Cody Jefferson also talked about organic social media and his processes on how, he gets anywhere between, I think, 10 and 20 million impressions every single month.
Yeah.
So it was cool to hear his frameworks, and it was so simple the way he goes about it. Like, doesn't have a fancy team. He was like, literally, it cost me $2,000 a month to
for 20 million impressions. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Yeah. And so it's just very high level of conversations. But I think the more valuable ones are also like what happens outside of that.
Yes.
The conversations that happen over lunch, over dinner, after everything. Yeah, so
I love that.
Solid all around.
And this is your first event with us, hopefully first of many. For someone that doesn't really know us, but it wants to understand what this is about, like, what would you tell someone about this event?
Here's what I always say with anything. It's like in life, like if it's for you, right? Yeah. It's like you feel a pull towards something or you don't, right? Like I never like to like convince someone like, hey, you should be here. It's like if you need to be convinced to be here, you're probably not the right person to be here.
Hell yeah.
In the first place. But like if you hear this, if you read about it and you feel a sense of resonance and pull to ultimately be in the room, then be in the room. It's like, and that's what it was for me. It was like, okay, I think life's calling me to be here. Let's go and be here. It's like, if you want to be around people who are doing stuff and who are, playing the game of life and the game of business at a really high level, if being around that level with peer group, feels valuable and like it would serve your personal journey, then probably a good idea.
And last question, for someone who wanted to follow your work and work with you, where should they go?
Check out madeventsmedia.com. So madeventsmedia.com. And it just kind of gives you an overview of our business and how we work and how we partner with people. Yeah, I think that's the best.
Dope. Done. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, appreciate you, man.
As we wrap up today's episode, we have something special just for you. If you've been inspired by what we've explored today and you're ready to take your learning to the next level, then our 4 Rooms Mastermind live event is the perfect next step. And because you're a part of our podcast family, we're offering an exclusive 10% discount on your registration when you apply and are accepted. This is your chance. It's your chance to build relationships with other ambitious entrepreneurs like yourself, to dive deeper into the 4 rooms of entrepreneurship, and to connect with experts who can truly help accelerate your growth. Simply follow the event link in the description of this episode and use the promo code 4rooms10. That's FOURROOMS10 on your application to claim this opportunity. This offer is subject to application approval and it's limited, so don't wait too long to make your decision. Join us and transform your journey with the insights and networking that only our live events can offer. Thank you for tuning in today. We look forward to seeing you at the event. And of course, right back here next time on the 4 Rooms podcast. Until then, keep balancing and keep growing.